Rolling. Yes, we are live right now. Give it a few seconds and we'll start the countdown.
I'm DK Metcalf from the Seattle Seahawks, and you're watching NORBCam.
All right. What's up, everybody? This is NorbCam coming at you with a roundtable. We have not done a roundtable in quite some time. It's still not the complete roundtable, but it's a partial roundtable. So we're going to do the best that we can do here. But unfortunately, it's not going to be the most fun roundtable that we've ever had, since we're talking about a 3-7 Seahawks team, trying to look for some answers, trying to see what it is that's going on with our team. Everybody in the world's got an opinion on how to fix this team, and it ranges from one extreme to the other, and I'm sure the fellas have some thoughts on it as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. These are the fellas that we got today, so let's go say hi to them. There we go. We've got Seahawks Martin. Haven't talked to Martin in a while. Martin, how you doing, man?
What's up? How's everyone doing? It's great to be back on the roundtable.
It's great to have you back as well. Steezy A. Smith. Been a busy man. I'm glad you made some time to come out here, man. How you doing?
Man, I'm feeling wonderful as usual, blessed by the best. And man, I missed you guys. I miss the fans, and I miss doing this every single Wednesday. And I know we're probably, it's probably at that point now where it's the lowest of lows, but it'll be Go Hawks for life. So.
Yeah, you got to, man, right? This is where we really find out who the true diehard Seahawks fans are. The dyed in the wool, the ones who are not just hopping on when it's good and jumping off when it's bad, because, man, we've had a lot of bad years, and a lot of people only have been here for the good years. So, I've been through a lot of, so, we've been lucky. We've been blessed to have so many good years of the past 10 years of great Seahawks football. But, every once in a while, things don't always go our way, and that's just how it is. But there's a reason behind it, and that's what I want to get to in this show. I want to get your guys' opinions. And we may be joined, I'm hoping that Brian Abker may be able to join the show, another member of the roundtable. At the moment, he's tied up with some other things, but if he's able to jump on, he will. I also have Daniel Dovinh. You guys have seen him if you've been tuning into my show every week. He's been sponsoring my show, which I really appreciate. He's going to jump on here at the top of the hour, around the time that Seahawks Martin has to go. So we will have some other voices. And you guys can have a chance to bring your voice to the conversation as well. You can call that phone number right there, 202-926-1076, and then enter the code 696153. And we'll take some calls later on in the show and get your opinion on what the heck is wrong with the Seattle Seahawks. So with that, let me just start, Martin, because I know you got a limited amount of time, so I want to give you the floor first. First, I want to get your take. How did the Seahawks get to this point where we are 3-7? Who do you feel takes more of the blame at this point? If you had to point a finger, what's been the problem with the Seattle Seahawks up to this point?
I feel like if you just point at a finger at someone, someone's gonna hate your opinion anyways. But I feel like it's just been bad overall for the offense. They just haven't clicked this year. Even without Russ, even with Russ, it's just been really bad. I don't know if it's play calling. I don't know if it's the execution of it, or if they're even trying at this point. Because I don't know. I'm pretty sure you saw this, Nor, but like 3rd and 20, we had nothing to lose, and we just ran it with Homer. So I feel like they just give up really fast. And then the play calling is, well, really disappointing, honestly. We were expecting a lot from Shane Waldron, coming from LA as someone that is from under Sean McVay, who's like one of the most modernized coaches. I don't know how to say it, but he's very modern. And meanwhile, Pete Carroll's like still hanging back. Like a few years back, it's like he's too stubborn to move on from his old ways. And I feel like either Pete has some kind of control over this, or Waldron is just getting more into the Seahawks playbook than the playbook that he brought from the Rams. Although, I mean, we do see some tight end sweeps and stuff, but other than that, I mean, it's play calling's been really rough so far, and the execution.
So it sounds like you're mostly mentioning the offense here. So it doesn't sound like of all the departments you could blame, it sounds like you're pointing your finger at the offense at this point.
More to the offense. I mean, the defense, they give up a lot of yards for sure, but they're bend but don't break. Most of the time, it can actually work, especially if you're down at like field goal range. As you can see, like they either get a pick or they can like hold down and only give up a field goal. But I mean, other than that, they're okay at best, I'd say. But it's more on the offense, kind of screwing things up, not capitalizing on the opportunities that the defense gives them.
Yeah. Well, let's go to Steezy. Same question I want to ask you is, who do you point the finger at, man, at this point, to who's most responsible for a 3-7 record?
There's a lot of fingers to point, and just because I'm going to point this finger at this one man, I'm not blaming him of everything. I'm not going to place all of the blame on him. I just think that because he is the head coach, because he is the head of the snake, because he is, not just the head coach, but he's also the president of football operations. And that means that he has more say than John Schneider when it comes to personnel decisions, when it comes to drafting. And that's been a hot topic in Seattle as of late. A lot of people are pointing to these lackluster drafts in the last, 5-6 years. That's all on Pete. That is literally on Pete. The decision to trade 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a starting safety for Jamal Adams. That's Pete. He's the one who signed off on that. These defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators he's bringing on board, that's all on Pete. And I'm not trying to absolve any of the players of any blame. A lot of players deserve blame because at the end of the day, players are the ones playing and coaches are the ones coaching. And at the end of the day, it's up to the players to execute on the football field, and there has been a lot of execution. But on the same token, is Pete Carroll really putting these guys in the best position to succeed? We hear about Pete all the time, right? He's always talking about how he wants to run the football. He wants to, take the deep shots when they're there, and he wants to play with good, strong defense. Well, how are you going to base this identity of this current football team with the same identity that you had years ago when the personnel just doesn't fit that anymore? And so this year, I mean, we haven't had a run game. Yes, Chris Carson, hasn't been there. Alex Collins has been inconsistent, but why can't we change or shift the identity or the philosophy of this football team to better serve the personnel? And I'm not saying go back to let Russ cook, but I'm just saying, why stick with some of the same things that have worked before that aren't working now? And we see that it hasn't worked for years now. I mean, since 2017, this is one of my least favorite stats. The Seahawks have 1 playoff victory, and the Jaguars have 2. So in the last 4 years, the Jaguars, arguably the worst team of football, happens to have more playoff victories than us. And people always want to talk about, Pete has won so many of his regular season games. He's one of the winningest coaches of all time, especially in Seahawks history. But what good is all that when there aren't any playoff wins? And then when you point to the record, I feel like another guy that probably deserves a little bit of blame is Geno Smith. I mean, we saw what happened against the Steelers. We saw what happened against the Saints. It really came down to the last drive. And if Russ was there, I truly believe he would have made magic happen. I mean, he's just shown that to us time and time and again. And so he deserves the benefit of the doubt, especially in those type of situations. You look at our record, 3-7. Let's say you tack on 2 more wins. That's 5-5. And so 5-5 sounds a lot better than 3-7. We're still in the thick of things as far as the NFC playoff race. I mean, the Carolina Panthers, the Niners, the Eagles, all these teams are fighting for those last couple of spots. And they're sitting at 5-5. They're sitting at 5-4. And so I guess I can also blame Russ's injury. I mean, for the first time in his career, he's missed games due to injury. For the first time in his career, the Seahawks are unable to field a competent offense. For the first time in his career, so many things have happened this year, and I just feel like so many different factors have played into it. But number one, it got to be on Pete, and then number two, just the fact that we had a backup quarterback come in middle of the season. He was unable to lead us to victories for teams that we quite honestly should have won against.
Yeah, I think overwhelmingly most of the people out there a lot of people have jumped onto the Fire Pete bandwagon. The reality, though, is the Fire Pete thing, for those people who want it to happen, I think it's only going to happen if Jody Allen decides he wants to make it happen, because Pete Carroll is, from a positional standpoint, is one of the most powerful coaches manager, so to speak, in the NFL, because he's up there. He's not like he's answering to a bunch of other bosses who can take him down. He's got a lot of power, and he just renegotiated that contract. And so, while I think everyone wants to fire him, the reality too is this is the first season after being the Division West champs, going 12-4. Granted, we had an early exit, but we're just barely halfway through the season following that. So it's very easy right now to just be like, oh man, things are going terrible. Fire everybody, because you don't like what's going on.
It's kind of jumping.
But we haven't even finished the season yet. So I guess I'm kind of playing a little bit devil's advocate here, because it's easy to just, I always say it's so easy to just say, get rid of what you don't like, right? We're in a world now where we want instant results. We want immediate satisfaction, immediate gratification. You don't like this, do that. You don't like your wife, divorce her. Everybody just wants to just get they want to feel good now. They don't want to wait anymore. And so patience is gone. So is this one of those things that...
That's the problem with the fans. We spent so many years, having such good years, to the point where you've gotten used to it. It's like, I don't want to be rude to all the fans, but it's like a bratty kid at a candy store, and your parents will always get you candy, and then eventually they'll say no, and you're going to start whining all the time. This is I know Norb has been around has been a fan since the 80s. He's been through the 90s, which was one of the worst.
Long time.
Yeah. One of the worst decades in Seahawks history. And my dad was here. My dad was a fan in the 90s too. He told me how bad it was, but the fans still kept on going. It's not like now where we have one bad game and everyone's going to be like, oh my gosh, we suck. We better fire everyone, clear the house. And I go on the Seahawks Instagram, and all I see after a loss is stop posting. Why are you posting? And then if you praise a player, they'll be like, cool, now win the game. You got to have the patience a little. Every team has its ups and downs in their time. So you can't just expect them to be good every single year. So,
very good words of wisdom from the youngest member of the group here. Sounding like a wise old man talking about some very sage advice. But you're right. There is that point of patience. And, the one thing that I always, when I get into these conversations about things, that there's also, you brought up CZ about the draft, how we have definitely not hit well in the draft in recent years. That's definitely been a part of it. But also, we are reaping the results of being in the playoffs every single year, right? If you look at the NFC West, every team in the NFC West in the last 10 years has had a sucky period. And I know we got 49ers fans and we got Cardinals fans in here. Yeah, you guys sucked. You guys sucked for a good amount of time in the past decade or so. 49ers had their run, and then they sucked. And now they're back and down and back. Whatever, I'm not sure where they are. Cardinals, you guys have stunk for a long time. Let's be real, right? You guys had your closest chance back in, was it 2007, 2008, where I was actually rooting for you guys to actually beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you didn't get it done. But the Cardinals have been pretty horrible. So I know a lot of these Cardinals fans are trash talking, acting like they've been here the whole time. You guys just got here. So just chill on the pumping your chest, all right? And the Rams, yes, the Rams are good now. They've been good the last couple of years, but you guys had some stinko years for a long time, man.
Rams fans have every right to make fun of us though, because they always own us every year. No matter how.
Oh, I know. The Cardinals too. The Cardinals have had us too. I'm not saying that they haven't beaten us, but they haven't been at the top of the mountain for very long. They have had those dips. We have not had the dips. When you have the dips, you get good draft picks. You can build on players that are going to be your future. We have never had that opportunity to have a pick in the top part of the draft. So we keep that in mind. The part of it is you get the benefits of being in the playoffs every year. It also means you pick low, which means if you don't hit on that pick when you get it, which we haven't done, this is the result. The talent starts to diminish. So just keep that in mind as we're all kind of pointing fingers at everything. I want to quickly acknowledge, hold on a second. I just want to say Dukes of Hazzard for the super chat. Thanks very much. Alina Dahl, our fabulous moderator, asked the question, what do you think of the antics of DK? Is he causing problems with the time like Percy did? We'll get to that in a second, Alina. And I think there was another chat I want to make sure I acknowledge here. Yes, Dukes of Hazzard back again. It's the same thing every year, looking for someone to blame or fire. And Martin is wise / mature beyond his years. I echo the sentiment. He's going to be president one day. No, he's going to be a dentist. Never mind. Forget the president thing.
I don't want to get into politics. That stuff's just too stressful. As you can see
Okay,
right now.
so Martin, I know you got to go soon, so I want to make sure I get you to answer this question. It's what I put in the top of the title of this video. Is if you were the Seahawks owner, what would you do to fix this team? So let's say, and that means you have absolute power. You can fire anybody you want. You can make whatever changes you want within reason, obviously. You can't just put any player in here. But if you were given the torch, if you were Jody Allen, you are now like the president. You don't want to be in politics, but I'm making you temporarily the president, the top dog in the Seahawks. What would you do to fix this? And you could look at this for this year, or you could look at this like, well, I'm going to write this year off. Let's fix it for next year. But what would you do right now if you had the power and suddenly a genie said, boom, you make the decision?
I mean, I'm not very good with cap space. I don't like dig into that cap space stuff, so I'm not really going to dig into that. The thing I would say is that our problem is that we have not enough draft picks. I mean, right now, if the season ended today, we would technically have the 7th pick, but we traded it to the Jets. So now the Jets have like 2 top 10 picks. And so obviously the Jets want the trade so far. And so the problem is not enough draft picks, not enough players to help blossom the team. So I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we will eventually go into a rebuild for like within the next like 5 to 10 years. But I mean, a lot of our guys, their contracts end in like a couple years. So I mean, I guess you have to see if you're gonna extend them or keep them. I mean, well, first I'd say Bobby Wagner. I think it's time to let him go because he's not exactly, I mean, he's obviously not the same as he used to be. The only tackles he makes anymore are like about 70-80% of them are past the line of scrimmage when the running back's already gained 7 yards. And so, I mean, the leading tacklers thing, I just don't really, I don't really focus on that. I mean, having a lot of tackles is great, but like, are those tackles important? Like, are they tackles for losses or anything? But so I probably let go of Bobby Wagner eventually. Although, I mean, people would probably be like, "Wow, that's crazy." But and then Russell, that's the hardest thing because Russell's been carrying the Seahawks for so long, so it's really hard to move away from him. Plus, he's done so much in Seattle, just in general. So, I mean, I'm not great with the responsibility and all this owner stuff. So I'd rather just let it watch and see what happens, and then I'll analyze it. But we'll see. Yeah.
Okay. So if I were to put you on the spot and say Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll, both here next year, or one or the other, what would it be if you had to make a choice? You can have them both, or you can only have one.
Well, I mean, Pete's contract doesn't expire until like 2023, and then Russell's contract expires like next year, right?
You have the power now. You have the power. I just said you can overwrite that contract. So I'm saying if you basically, I'm giving you, make a choice, man. You got to make a choice here. Fire Pete, trade Russ, or keep them both.
I'd probably fire Pete because I mean he's had a great career. I feel like if he continued this really bad losing streak, his reputation might be tarnished or something. I feel like he should just retire soon, and maybe he'll get into the Hall of Fame eventually.
Okay. All right. So there you have it. He Fire Pete. He's on the Fire Pete bandwagon. So now I'm going to pivot to
hardcore.
you.
Not like
I know. Don't backpedal now. I know.
I would, but
See, this is where people take things out of context. See, I pushed Martin to basically. This is like the Russell Wilson interview from last year in the offseason. Like, what was his name? When did that interview? Yeah, Dan Patrick. He was like, he asked, so Russ, why are you getting sacked all the time? Oh, we need to work on something. He just kept pushing till he finally said, Russell, are you getting sacked too many times? And eventually had to say, yeah, I'm probably getting sacked too many times. That's like, so now people say, Seahawks Martin wants Pete Carroll fired. That's because I pushed you and forced you into the answer. But I don't think I have to force Steezy to do this because you already said in the chat, you are on the Fire Pete bandwagon, hashtag Fire Pete, but not for the reasons everybody else is saying. I want you to explain yourself. In a second, I want to acknowledge Dukes of Hazzard, who says he thinks Russ is going to the Dolphins. I've heard that before, too. Let's go to Steezy. Defend yourself here. What do you mean by that? Why fire Pete for reasons different from everybody else? What does that mean?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to, preface my comments by saying that I'm not trying to attack any fans. I understand people appreciate and love Pete, and I do as well. I don't want people to think that just because I'm of this mindset that, I hate Pete, I'm a Pete hater, he's old, get him out of here. It has nothing to do with that. Yes, he's the oldest coach in the NFL, and when you look at, okay, who's going to be in the NFL longer, Russ or Pete, it's obviously going to be Russ. I mean, if we're being honest. But I say all that to say that, like I alluded to earlier, right, the NFL is a results-oriented business. It's been 4 years. The last time Seattle had a playoff victory, I was still in high school. It's been 4 years. And so the NFL, we always talk about, what have you done for me lately? One playoff victory? So you're telling me the worst team in the NFL right now, or arguably the worst team in the Jacksonville Jaguars, they have more playoff victories than us in the last 4 years? How is that okay? How is that okay? And then here's another reason. So we hear about players in press conferences talking about Tyler Lockett, for example, right? After the Cardinals game, he was like, yo, what we're watching on film isn't what we're getting in the games. And then Trey Flowers, early in the year, after the Minnesota Vikings game, he called out the scheme. He called out the coaching staff. How did he respond? Oh, no. I didn't hear about his comments. Nothing's wrong with the scheme. We're doing what we usually do, blah, 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 blah. So he's failing to acknowledge that there's anything wrong at all when that's clearly not the issue at hand. There's obviously something wrong, and he failed to acknowledge that. And then now you go back to Tyler Lockett's press conference, right? He's talking about, what we're seeing in games, we're not seeing that in film. Didn't he say that last year? And so what does that mean? That means a lack of adjustments. When there's a lack of adjustments in game, who's that on? The coaching staff, the head coach. And so after Tyler Lockett made his comments, they asked Pete, did you hear about what Tyler Lockett was saying? Oh, no, I didn't hear about that. But, we knew everything that we were doing. We didn't see anything that we didn't like. We didn't see anything that was new. We knew what we were doing against the Cardinals. Did we really? I don't think so. I mean, and then you hear about DK when they asked him after last year, what happened last year? Oh, we just ran the same game plan. We didn't make any adjustments. Who's that on? Head coach Pete Carroll. So now we have the lack of playoff victories in the last 4 years. Now we have players talking about things that are wrong with the scheme and the coaching staff. There's a failure to make adjustments in game. Those are two red flags already. And then a lot of people also point out to the fact that after Super Bowl 49, in which Pete essentially chose Russ over beast mode, a lot of people are still salty about that. And so a lot of people are still looking at Pete sideways. And ever since that happened, what sort of success has Pete had? I'm not going to go as far as to say that he's lost control of the locker room, but I think some of those guys are starting to become tone deaf. They're not hearing Pete no more. They're not feeling Pete no more. They're not really rocking or riding with Pete as much as they used to. And so when you have players speaking out against, coaches, essentially that's what it is, or at least that's how I look at it. I mean, something's wrong with the culture. And then I also talked about it earlier, the lack of good draft picks. Norb, you made a great point. You talked about how we never have high draft picks, and so we never get the chance to pick the highest quality of players. That's true, but it's also true that there are a lot of Pro Bowlers. Lamar Jackson, for example, he just won the MVP unanimously a couple years ago. Where was he picked? 30th overall. That's where we've been picking every single year. 27, 26, 28, 29, 30th, 31st. Sometimes we trade down. But what have we done with those picks? We picked Rashad Penny over Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb wasn't picked until the 30s. We picked Malik McDowell, who had never played a down for us. He was our first pick. Jermaine
we could have had Buda. We could have had Buda Baker. Yeah, we could have had Buda Baker.
And then Jamal Adams is a great player. I don't regret that trade, but I regret the price that we paid. That was Pete wanting to trade 2 first-round picks for an in-the-box safety. No one does that anymore. And then I always say in my Seahawks episodes, there's only one guy that can drive the boat. Well, in this case, Russ and Pete are continuing to jockey for who's going to drive the boat. Pete wants to do this. Russ wants to do this. And then uncharacteristically, Russ calls out the team last offseason. When have you ever seen Seahawks players just calling out the team like that? And so the Seahawks are in the news for all the wrong reasons. And what's Pete's number one rule is to keep things between us, between the locker room, not to let things get into the media, protect the team, right? And so you have Russ breaking that, the best player on the team, he's breaking that. And then the scheme as well. I mean, a lot of people talk about how the offense is so bland, it's so predictable, it's so vanilla, it's so boring. There's nothing new about it. With Shane Waldron coming in, we expected to see this and that and this and that. We've seen flashes, but the offense that I see still resembles just straight up Pete Carroll. He has way too much autonomy over both the offense, the defense, the entire football team. He has way too much power. We look at Bill Belichick, right, in New England. He also wields the same amount of power as Pete. He's not only the head coach, he's also the president of football operations. But starting last year, Bill Belichick actually relinquished drafting guys. He stopped drafting guys. He gave that to the actual GM of the football team. And the Patriots have been known to draft horribly in the last decade or so. But in this past year, they've come up on some guys. They got Mac Jones, and there's so many other guys that they brought on in the past year. And that was the first year in which Bill Belichick stopped drafting guys. And so Pete –
Oh, there he is.
as a head coach.
Sorry, Steve,
so maybe
we lost you for a second. There you go. There he is. Sorry, you blacked out. We lost you for a second. We're good. Go ahead. Keep going.
Sorry. Okay. So maybe you don't fire Pete and tell him to just leave the team completely, but you got to take away some of his power. He has way too much power. He should not be both the GM and the head coach. He doesn't know how to draft right. And making personnel moves and trading that much capital for a Jamal Adams type player, clearly he doesn't know, at least in this stage in his career, how to properly utilize draft capital. I mean, when you're paying a quarterback so much money, you need draft picks to pan out. Well, no draft pick has really panned out since DK, Damian Lewis, and Tyler Lockett. Those are 3 selections in the last, 7, 8, 9, 10 years? So there's a lot to go around. I have even more that I could talk about. At this point, it's become endless, the point of thing or the amount of things that I could talk about as far as it pertains to Pete, getting out of here, at least relinquishing some of that power. But I think for right now, those are some of the biggest things. Those are some of the biggest causes of concern. And a lot of fans are just, forgive me if this offends anyone, but a lot of fans are delusional. And I'm not saying this applies to any of y'all, but so many people are saying, oh, no, he's still a great head coach. He is no longer a great head coach. I'll say that.
Oh.
Well,
Martin, you got something? Actually, let me just acknowledge real quick. Dukes of Hazzard's, I guess, trying to sell of offensive coordinators out there. I don't know how Darrell Bevell's doing. I know their team ain't doing all that great, but so I don't know if you're going by record alone. And then Dukes of Hazzard also says, Pete shut his feet off. Yeah, you went to black, and Pete's like chewing his gum, going, all right, enough of this Steezy guy. He's got more power than we realize. But Martin, you had some thoughts on that.
All right. Before I go, I was just gonna mention what Steezy said about comparing Pete to Bill Belichick. The thing about what makes Bill Belichick so good is that, okay, yeah, maybe Brady was a big part of how good he did, but the thing was he's also able to adjust. At first, when Brady won his first couple Super Bowls, Bill Belichick has such a strong defense. He's a defensive mind. He had Willie McGinnis and all those amazing players. But then once his defense started to die off, he began to adjust. He was able to adjust to offense. And now he made Brady one of the not one of the greatest, the greatest quarterback and best NFL player of all time. And then Brady left, and then he had that one bad year. But then you know what? He was able to adjust again, bring in Mac Jones and another decent team, and now they're in first place in the AFC East. How does he do this? Because he's not stubborn. He's able to adjust. And I mean, he doesn't have too much power. He's willing to let people do it for him because he trusts them. He's not like Pete, who pretty much takes all the power for himself. And so that's why Bill Belichick's such a great coach compared to Pete. I feel like if Pete can just adjust, he'd actually be a lot better.
Wow, there's a lot of stuff in there. Power, taking the power away, addition by subtraction. And my buddy Pat Svoboda is watching on here too, and he said, didn't we do that with Mike Holmgren? Because remember Holmgren, he had all that power, and then I think it was one of those things where I think it was figured that you're better if you just focus on coaching and not not trying to do too much. I noticed you didn't mention John Schneider in all this. Not, because it's kind of those have been a two-headed monster. Whenever we gave credit, it was Pete Carroll, John Schneider. The two of them in tandem were the ones making these choices. And I noticed you haven't mentioned John Schneider in all these conversations here. But ultimately, it is Pete Carroll's call. So I'm sure John and him talk, but he's got the veto power. So I guess
exactly.
if there is a argument to be made, it would be that. Alina Dahl, yes, asks, do you think there's a power struggle between Pete and Russ? I think we've kind of made that point. Russ wants to do more of Pete's job, and Pete afraid to tell Russ to back off. Yeah, I would love to hear. Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall in the walls of the VMAC and just hear what those team meetings like? What's the room in when the coaches are by themselves? What they're talking about? What Russ is talking about in his own quarterback room? It's a weird time right now with all this stuff going on. But let me ask. Actually, Martin, how are you doing on time?
I think I'm about good to go now. Yeah, because
you're about to jump on. Okay.
When you're 14, you still got to listen to your parents.
Okay. All right. Are you still doing YouTube, or are you kind of off that still?
If you've been living under a rock, unless you've been living under a rock, you should know that I quit.
You stopped. Okay. I wasn't sure if you had quit it last time.
Yeah, I decided, you know what? I don't really want to do this anymore. It's not exactly the same as it used to be. I'd rather talk with like the Roundtable guys here rather than like talk to my phone and just like looking at it. It just feels weird. And then,
I understand.
It didn't feel like a hobby anymore. It felt more like a job, I guess. So yeah, I decided, you know what? We'll just end this right here. I mean, it's fine. I'll be fine. I still got to do Roundtable with you guys, so that's.
Hey, I'm glad you can come in here and bring your. Better. Well, you bring such infinite wisdom to the show. So I love the fact that we can do that. So, Martin, if you need to go, I know you got family calls, but that's perfect timing because we've got Daniel Dovinh. Dovinh Real Estate. Daniel, I'm glad you're here. Glad you can make it. You come into a very heated discussion here, talking about who needs to stay, who needs to go. And it was perfect timing because Steezy just made a very strong argument. And Martin, bye-bye. Thanks for being on with the show, Martin. We'll see you later. Daniel, for those of you who don't know, Daniel Dovinh of Dovinh Group at Marketplace Sotheby is a fantastic real estate agent. He's been supporting my program since last year as a sponsor and this year as well. So I'm glad to be able to collaborate with you and talk Seahawks and also get your real estate tips and things like that on the show as well. But we're talking Seahawks right now, and I definitely want to get your take as to throw you right into the fire and ask that question, which I'm going to ask in a second, but I want to acknowledge the super chat in here. Darth Soldier says, quarterbacks should stay quarterbacks, coaches should stay coaches, GMs should be GMs. Mm-hmm. Division of power right there. All right, so Daniel,
wait, Norb,
if you were yes, Steve, what you got?
Daniel, nice to meet you, by the way. But before you go to Daniel, I want to give you a little bit more food to work with. But before I do that, can I ask you something real quick?
Yeah.
So what was Seattle's record in the second half of last year?
Oh, man. It wasn't, well, I know we started out 5. I know we started out 5-0. Then we lost. We became 5-1. We lost. Didn't we lose like 2 in a row? It was like 5-2, and then
so we
only lost 2 more. We lost 2 more games because we finished 12-4. Mm-hmm. So, what is that? What was my math here? Did we also finish 4-2? Because it's 12-4. We start out 5-2, so should know the trick question. Anyway, but it's something like that. We had 4 losses. So anyway, what's your point?
So we struggled in the second half of last year, right? So if we combine that with offensively. But we were also losing some games that we shouldn't have lost to. The Giants in particular, Colt McCoy, oh my goodness. But the playoff loss, right, that counts as a loss as well. And then we combine that with this year's record. Then what's the new record? We don't have to touch on all the math, but it's not a very good one. And I think that with the talent that we have on the roster, maybe it's not as top tier as everyone likes to think that it is, but there's no way a team with Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Gerald Everett should be ranking 30th in total yards, 24th in scoring offense, 23rd in rushing offense. I know some of those numbers are somewhat buoyed by the fact that Geno Smith was playing quarterback for us, but Russell Wilson still has played a majority of the season, and the offense has looked so stagnant, with a second to worst third down team in all of football, converting less than 33% of our third downs, and that has been an issue for years now. It seems like that has never been fixed. And once again, whose fault is that? Pete.
All right, y'all. I want
Okay.
you to know that I've been listening in my car, coming back from work this whole time. So I've liked the hot takes, but I got a new hot take for you guys, which is Pete and Russell. Neither of them will be back next year. Why? Because I think it's time for the changing of the guard. And everyone that knows me knows that I love Pete Carroll. I actually am a firm believer that the good days of the Legion of Boom and Marshawn Lynch, they're the reason why we did so well, not because of Russell. Russell was a good role player on that team. If you think about the studs we had a lot of great role players. Remember Jermaine Kearse, a man Doug Baldwin? Like, those are my guys, right? And the Legion of Boom was full of Hall of Famers. And you had Marshawn Lynch, who in my eyes is a Hall of Famer. But I think Russell Wilson, people attribute a lot of the success to him. But if you really look back at that season, Russ is not the reason why we won in 2013. He's not the reason why we won in 2014. Exactly. I agree with Elena McCullum. Russ was a game manager. That's true. But I think what happens is, money-wise and politically wise, we switched gears to Russell, and I think Russell's been a great player. I think he's done a lot of great things for us. But when you're getting paid, $30+ million a year, and the production has slipped, it's rough. I'll also say this for Pete Carroll. We ended last season 5-1, actually, before our playoff loss. So we ended pretty well. Everything looks a lot better when you win, obviously, and everything looks terrible when you lose. So I think we're getting to a point where I'm thinking about, okay, is it Pete or is it Russ? Is it Pete or is it Russ? I think they go together. I think they either both stay next year or they're both gone. I can't imagine a situation where Russ stays here for the rebuild. Okay, Dwayne Brown retires. Let's try out Stone Forsythe, right? Let's try out a new center. Let's try out we're going to replace Brandon Shell, and Russell's going to be fine with that. Nor can I see a situation where Pete Carroll stays and we get, Trevor Lawrence type young quarterback and that works. Neither of those situations make a whole lot of sense. Last thing I want to say is shout out to my homies Chris, Rachel, and Bruce over in Kelso watching NorbCam. Huge fans over there. And I just want to shout out because, they're huge fans of the show, and I know they're watching right now. So.
And they've connected with you from a real estate standpoint. So that's awesome that they made that connection. So thank you for watching the show, and thank you for supporting Daniel. And for all of you guys who happen to be in the real estate business market, whether you're buying or selling, give this guy a look-see, because great guy. So Alina Dahl says, positive vibes. The Seahawks will win this Sunday as a birthday favor to me. Yep, I'm a turkey baby this year, tomorrow. Woohoo! Alina.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Alina.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
Oh, man.
So that's my hot take, y'all.
Wow. So you're predicting they're both going to be gone. Well, there's been, I wouldn't say it's a completely crazy take, because I know there have been a lot of people saying that, well, if Russ goes, and you heard Pete at one point a few weeks ago saying something like, yeah, if Russ wasn't here, I probably wouldn't have been here this long either. Something to that effect, where he gave credit to Russ for having, gotten him this far. I don't know. I have to disagree with you, Dovinh. I mean, you don't bite the hand that feeds you. You don't piss off the sponsor. But man, I gotta say that I feel like there are a lot of people who say Russ is just a game manager, just a game manager. I disagree, man. I think you got to remember and look back. You got to look back at some of those games, some of those moments where Russ had to do some amazing things that no other regular quarterback could have pulled off. and including 2013. We were not a great dominant team. If you recall, there were a lot of games where we had to come back from behind. We were down to the Buccaneers 21-0 at the half. We were down to the Houston Texans about 20-0. Multiple games where the defense wasn't getting it done. We were in a hole, and the offense had to come back, and Russ had a big part to do with it. A lot with his legs, some of it with his arm. So he gets shoved into this category as a game manager, but I think that's short selling him a little too much to say that he was just a game manager, because a game manager would not have brought the team back from a lot of those games. And if we don't win those games in 2013, I don't know if we get a first round bye. I don't know if we get home field advantage, and I don't know if we can win the Super Bowl. I'm just saying.
Let me say that I did not say I wanted Russell gone. I didn't say that.
But you called him a game manager. I'm just saying you called him a game manager, which to me I think that diminishes his contributions.
Game manager with a little Hall of Fame sprinkled in, for sure. He definitely had a lot of magic back in those days. That is true. All I'm saying is that when you shift that much of the salary cap to one player, that's not, unfortunately, the formula these days for winning. And a lot of things have shifted as well. Like in the league, for example, they don't support defenses playing like Brandon Browner, smacking guys around. It's kind of like the NBA. The NBA no longer allows for elbows and punching and scratching and all this stuff like the bad boys of, Detroit Piston era, right? Same thing with football. Now it's all about passing, and we didn't really invest in our offensive line for like the last 10 plus years. This ultimate team sport. I'm not blaming one player. I'm just saying the odds are we're not going to run it back next year. That's all I'm saying. I do agree with you, though. Russell is more than a game manager. I'll give you that.
Vegas Eat Speak says, look at Wilson's eyes. They have lost the fire. He's not the same since week 9 last year. Stop thinking short term. Think 10-year for our team. Trade. I would say that. Let me just throw this out there. Now, I agree. I'm not. I'm going to pivot and say I don't say that Russell's not to blame for a lot of what's going on, because I watched that game like you guys all did. I watched it in person, and I was very frustrated with Russell Wilson's choices of what he did with the ball. Because ultimately, as you break this down, you're trying to see what's wrong with this team. You're going, is it our offensive line? Did not give enough time? Is it the play call? Was it not designed right from the get-go? Or did Russ, when the play was called, everything was played correctly, but instead of going to a more obvious target that could have gotten you 5 yards, he chose to try to tuck it to the end zone, and it fell incomplete, or he overthrew it. That happened, and I was very frustrated. I was like, Russ, take the freaking check down. Take what the defense is giving you. Tom Brady's doing it. Aaron Rodgers doing it. Everybody's doing it, but you. I think he threw to the running back one time. I could be wrong, but I remember one time that he threw to the running back, and the rest of it was some tight ends and a lot of trying to get the big chunk. And that at end of that first half play where we should have scored a touchdown and eaten up the clock was very frustrating to watch, because they very poorly, either very poorly called or very poorly executed by Russ. So what I feel like is happening is it's a combination. Again, we're trying to compare, like where Russ was in 2013 to where we are now. We weren't paying him a lot of money. He obviously earned it because he got to that contract stage. And so now we haven't had the resources nor the draft position to get those really good, linemen that have allowed him to do what I think he was able to do before. Now, he was a lot more nimble before. He could run around and escape stuff. He's not quite as nimble. So the linemen have to be able to block and protect better. And, I think it's just that combination of Wilson slowing down a step, maybe not choosing to run as much, and also I think pressing too much because he feels like he's got to get down the field, and he's ignoring the easy stuff underneath. And I don't know if that's just desperation to prove that he can do it, or because he feels like he has to, because if I don't get the first down in this throw, we're not going to get it, because we can't get any first downs, if we don't get it all at one chunk. It feels like it's a lot of different things, but it's clearly this combination is not working. But the question I want to throw out there to think about, because I do want to take some calls, a lot of people on the calls who want to get some questions out to us, is could this thing, with time, let's say a situation where the antithesis, Daniel, of what you're saying, they both stay. By some miracle, they both stay. Could this team actually, with time, develop into what it needs to be, and it just hasn't clicked? Or are we just passed the expiration date and we've already proved that it's not getting better? Think about that for a second while we take some calls here. Dukes of Hazzard says Russ is going to want to join a winning team while he's in his prime. We all think that is underlying, is going to be his priority. Let's see. Let's go to, hopefully you guys can hear this. Let's go to Kellogg. Let's try this. Is this Kellogg? I don't know who this is. Who is this? On the phone line. Let me get the line up here. Hold on a second. Where are you here? Okay. On the phone line, it says Kellogg ID. I don't know what that is. Are you there?
Who's this?
I'm asking you. Who's this?
Oh, this is Nikki from actually Coraline, Idaho.
Nick, what's up?
What's up? Okay,
up?
can you guys hear him? Can Steezy and Daniel? You can hear him. Okay, all right. Can you guys?
Also known as Discord on Coach Mesh.
This is Coach Mesh. I was gonna say I know this voice. I didn't recognize the number. Okay, Coach Mesh, you want to weigh in here? What's your thoughts on the current Seahawks situation, or if you have a question?
I think. So here, I'm gonna actually go back to what you asked a question earlier, and here's what I would do as an owner. I would talk to Pete Carroll. I would discuss what are the problems first, and then tell him to go fix the problems, and then also go tell my offensive coordinator, is there a different route we could use on this play?
Don't you think they've had talks? Don't you think every week they go from this game and go, what is going on? We got to fix this problem. But obviously they haven't been getting it fixed. I don't think that. Well, it's not from lack of trying.
And then besides that, I would actually go talk to Russell Wilson
again.
And I will tell him to get rid of his endorsements, get rid of his what's commercials,
money,
and then just focus on your wife and just focus on your family and
so it's his endorsement. It's just his commercial endorsements that are to blame for the failings. Well, I mean, there's something to be said about spreading yourself out too thin, because obviously Russell Wilson of 2013, we used to talk about no time to sleep, right? All he did was wake up, watch film, stay to the end of the evening, and then go back home and then do it all over again, right? So obviously he's not doing that anymore because he's got other stuff. He's got his wife, he's got kids. But then all the great quarterbacks do, right? They all got their life. So anyway, Coach Mesh, we'll take the consideration. We'll put a memo out to Russell. Hey Russ, you need to let go of all your millions of dollars of endorsements, because that's going to solve like the Seahawks trouble. $40
million a year.
Yeah, no problem. So. Let's go to from the 907 area code. Who's this?
Yo, what's up, Norb?
Oh, what's up? Who's this? Where you from?
I'm from Alaska. John Rick, 453.
Oh, it's John Rick. Okay, wow, all the regulars from the Discord. What's up, man? What do you got? What's your thoughts on this?
So my assessment, right, is I think we should fire Ken Norton Jr. And I think we should keep Pete Carroll and Steve Waldron.
Why?
The reason I say that is our defense hasn't been like really, really great since back in the good old days where we used to have Cam, Earl, all these good defensive players. But Ken Norton Jr., I feel like he's held us down on our defense, so that's why I think we should fire him.
Interesting. That's the first time somebody. It's just funny because the Ken Norton Jr. thing comes in waves, doesn't it? Like last year, the start of the year, fire Ken Norton, and then at the end, it's like, Ken Norton's doing a good job. All right, fire the other guy. And then this year, start out again, fire Ken Norton, worst defense in the league. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh no. My thought, I'm all on the offense on this one, because when you are at half the time of possession, half the yardage, the defense can only do so much. Now that again, the defense isn't without fault because they gave up the first touchdown and made it look like a hot knife through butter in that first quarter. But I think it's more on the offense than it is on the defense. My opinion.
I'd like to point out, we gave up 23 points, and yes, it was to Colt McCoy, but they have some nice players on that team like AJ Green, right, and Zach Ertz. They have a good O-line. My point is other teams will win after giving up 23 points, right? But we didn't win because our offense was terrible, and they continue to be terrible, and it does put our defense in a terrible position to be playing double the plays that the other defense is playing. It doesn't make any sense mathematically, and it all starts with us not being able to continue drives, and I think that's what a lot of the frustration was coming from people like Tyler Lockett and people like Pete and Russell Wilson after the game. They're talking about, well, we're talking about all these things that are happening, but the problem is we just can't keep the drives going. That's basically it.
Third down.
Basically losing on third down. Yeah.
Horrible. Worst in the league. I think worse than the league on third down.
By
the way, it should have been, and you're right, it has been that way. We've just been getting by the skin of our teeth. But that score really is misleading because it really should have been 30-13. The Cardinals gave us missed kick, to make it feel closer than it was.
Right.
It shouldn't have been that close. I mean, that was a blowout
Sure.
in every stat, other than if that kicker isn't, doing his best attempt to be.
And we also had a pick that gotten taken away too. So
that's true. That is very true, and it's unfortunate. And unfortunately for Seattle, our margin is so narrow because we can't score points and we can't maintain drives that we get one break that goes the wrong way from the officials. It's like, there was our chance. We had a pick and we missed it. They didn't give it to us, so game over. It's that narrow. That's how much we need those breaks.
And Norb, to that point, after the Packers game, if you heard Pete in his post-game presser, he was essentially blaming the game on the refs. And I know there were some egregious calls in that game, namely that holding that they called on Damian Lewis just right before halftime. He was the one that fell to the ground, and yet they called a holding on him. But while there were some bad calls in that game, for Pete to blame the officials, that to me is just like,
right.
He's saying that we're losing games because of the officials. If he has to rely on that, I think something's broken.
And again, he was asked a question about it. It wasn't like he just came out and say, "Hey, well, you know what, everybody, we lost because of the officials." So it wasn't like he just went out and said that was the reason. But
right.
But mindset-wise, right in 2013, one of their themes was "Leave no doubt." Right when they went to the Super Bowl, they're like, "Leave no doubt." What that meant was just in case there's some weird conspiracy stuff with Las Vegas odds or refs or whatever, leave no doubt. So that's why they put on the gas against the Broncos. Pete Carroll, I love the guy, but he has lost some of the fire of he doesn't talk about stomping on teams or anything. Like in the USC days, they'd win by 30 or 40 points. They'd love it, right? But now everything is on the preserve. It's on the conserve basis, and it's not on the aggressive. It's always
here's the thing, though.
Here's a chance to win at the end of the game. It's why not come out guns a-blazing every quarter?
But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Since everyone brings up from halfway point of last year, right, where the offense really started to fall apart.
Sure.
What defenses are doing, and what we have failed to adjust to, is defensive have figured out what our strength is, and that's Russell and the deep ball. Once they realize, hey, let's not get beat by that. Let's drop two safeties deep. We'll make sure that nobody can get beat over the top. We'll force Seattle to run the ball or hit it underneath. And they're begging us to do it. They're saying, here, have it, but you're not going to have this back here. And we're not taking it. We're not adjusting. And I don't know whose fault that is. Maybe that is, again, back to Steve, what you're saying. Maybe that is a Pete Carroll thing to not adjust to that. Is it a Shane Waldron? Is it Russell Wilson? Again, he also ultimately throws the ball, but there have been some plays where it's it's 3rd and 5, and guys are still running with their backs turned to Russell, and he's getting sacked. So that's a bad play design right there. Where the hell is the short game that Waldron was brought in for? That's what's driving me the most nuts here, and why is that not happening? That's the big mystery.
You want the real answer? I would love to go over our last draft picks, and I'd like to point out how many offensive linemen that we drafted that are actually starting. Are you guys down for that? Is that too much? Is that too granular?
Not at all.
Well, we can do that. I think there's no surprise.
I'm not going to go that
Our
many
drafts
years.
have been bad, but
Okay.
go ahead.
This year, one, because we only had 3 picks, so we got Stone Forsythe, right? He's a backup to Dwayne Brown. He's not even playing. All right, last year, we had Damian Lewis. Great, he's a starter. Fantastic, right? 1 offensive lineman drafted. After that, who did we have back in 2019? LJ Collier, Marquise Blair, Metcalf, that's a win. Cody Barton, it's 3rd round draft pick. Gary Jennings, boo. Okay, Phil Haynes, only offensive lineman drafted in 2019. Where's Phil Haynes? He's been a backup of backups, right? The year before that, we drafted Jamarco Jones in the 5th round. Okay, so that's just me going the last couple years. Notice we've gotten 1 offensive line starter. And what do we notice about all the teams that are good at football ever? They always have a good offensive and defensive line. You can't do anything
Starts
in
in
football.
the trenches.
You cannot do anything in football without the trenches.
Yeah.
Period.
And-
It's just
and-
end of story.
And again, is it a byproduct of drafting late? Look, and there's a whole nother philosophy. Look what the Rams are doing. The Rams is like, screw the draft. We're going to give all our picks away, but we're just going to take proven stuff and we're just going to pay them. Forget about the draft. You know, that's what they're doing this year. They're going all in. They're like, screw it. Let's just bring everybody in. We'll just pay them.
They have the nucleus first, right? It helps to have Aaron Donald, right? It helps to
That's
have
a
a
good
running
one.
game. I feel like their offensive linemen are
And again,
much better than ours.
when they got Aaron Donald, were they NFC champs
nope.
when they
Nope.
got him? No. They benefited by the fact they were in a position to get him because they had some bad years. We haven't had those years where you can get a Nick Bosa. And so when we're drafting late, I understand what you're saying. We're missing on the drafts. But again, if we don't have the best to pick from, by the time those best guys who are going to be the staple guys who are going to last for a long time, they're not there anymore. So again,
But no, wasn't Seattle known for finding all these gems in the later rounds? So why is it that in every single round we're finding the complete opposite of gems? We're not finding anything of value, and so
You're right,
I
we
just
sucked.
feel like, I just feel like he's getting a pass. Like he has to be held accountable for that. He is the head coach. He is the man with the most power. And look, my point earlier about I articulated it in the wrong way, and forgive me for that. I didn't mean to talk about our record. I meant to talk about how awful our offense was in the second half of last year.
okay, yes,
Well, the offense has
you're
been
right.
awful this
Offensively,
entire
we've
season.
stunk. We've stunk since the last half
It
of
just
last
seems like
year,
it's been
and it's
forever
carried over
now.
into this year.
Yeah, and so with the exception of week 1 this year, we've been awful in literally every game, Russ or Gino. And so if you combine the second half of last year on top of everything that's transpired this year, that amounts to pretty much a full season. So for a season now, the offense has been horrible. Like you said, defenses have been playing this different. We've been failing to make the adjustments. Again, I can't stress this enough. Who is that on? That is on head coach Pete Carroll. We talked earlier about 3rd down. We've been awful on 3rd down, not just this year. It's been that way for years. And in the last couple of years, I remember people talking about, oh, we're too conservative, or, oh, Pete, he mismanages games, or, oh, he's not being aggressive enough, or, oh, Pete should let Russ do this from time to time, or, oh, Pete should do this. There's been question marks about Pete for years now, and I feel like now that we're really talking about it, now that we're really, the magnifying glass is really on him, I feel like some people are defending him and absolving him of a lot of the blame that he should actually be receiving blame for.
Yeah. It really comes down to one thing. It comes down to the 1 yard line at Super Bowl 49.
Yep.
It really, that
Yes,
was like,
sir.
if there was a movie called Back to the Future Seahawks,
Oh, no.
I would get in that freaking DeLorean and drive to the stadium and get on the headset and whatever and
Give it to
change that play,
Debo.
because the whole time space continuum went completely screwball from that point on.
Yep. I bet
To
you
the
Tom
benefit
Brady,
of Brady and to the
I bet
negation
you
of
Brady
the Seahawks.
would not have been a buck if we won that game. The whole
Wilson would have
universe
had 2
would have
Super
been
Bowls.
different.
Wilson would have had 2 Super Bowls, and Brady would have had 3, and he would be living in the shadow of Deflategate of that season.
That's
Just
so
think about
wonky.
that. If 1 yard gone the other way, but look, we're not living in Back to the Future land. So, okay, I got it. People have been begging to put A1 Gamer Trey, who's on the Discord, because he has something to say to a very trash talking, awesome kid, Cardinals fan, in the chat. So I'm going to bring A1 Gamer Trey right now. Let's keep it clean, okay? I don't have a 5-second, mute button. So whatever you're going to do, let's be at least G-rated enough that I'm not going to get banned on YouTube or anything like that. Okay, A1 Gamer Trey, you there?
Yeah, what's up, Nort?
Hey, what's up? Can you guys hear him?
Mhm.
Okay, all right. You've been wanting to
I'm
talk
just saying
here,
that,
so here's your
like a
chance,
few years,
man.
yeah, I'm here.
All right, anyone get
I'm
your
just
trade?
saying that a few years ago the Cardinals was trash, bro. They would have still be trash if it was for Kyler Murray or D Hop, bro. Uh, they got lucky with the past few drafts. In a few more years, I guarantee you that Cardinals cap space is gonna be low, and they will go back to the old Cardinals they was, and that's the losing Cardinals. They have no right to talk. At least we got a ring, and they don't. 3 Super Bowl appearances and 1 ring. We got that right. The Cardinals don't have no rings. So Awesome Kid should not have the word Super Bowl in his language at all. That's all I got to say.
All right. Well said, man. Well said.
Facts.
Appreciate it.
Don't
There you
care
go.
about your feelings.
Yeah. Until you earned it, you don't got it yet. So keep that in mind. You know.
And the
It's not
49ers
easy.
like, well, don't forget about our rings. You know,
5 Super Bowl rings. Oh man. So Daniel, you said you don't think Pete or Russ will be here next year. You said you don't think he'll be here. But are you saying?
Yeah.
No. I understand. But again, I want to put it in the aspect of if you were Jody Allen right now and you can decide the fate of both those guys, is that what you would do that? You would fire them or fire Pete and trade Russ in a heartbeat.
No,
Is that what you're saying?
If I was Jody Allen, I would continue doing what I've been doing, which is just relax. Jody's relaxing. She's not stressing about the Seahawks. She's probably like, Pete's got it. John's got it. It's probably fine. We won the division last year with no fans in the stands. Now we got Lumen Field. You know what? No one's talking about that. What? Maybe CenturyLink was a good thing. You know, maybe Quest was a good thing, and it's all about Lumen. What does Lumen even do? I'm joking. But the point is, I don't think she's actually going to fire Pete, nor is she going to call for Russell's head to be traded, to be honest with you. So if I was Jody, I wouldn't do anything. I won't do anything.
That's what she's been doing. She hasn't been doing
That's what I'm
anything.
saying. That's what I'm saying.
Well, and it's interesting because some people they hate the owner when they're too involved.
Right.
But then everyone loved Paul Allen because he really didn't do much, right? He wasn't sitting there, being in the media like Jerry Jones, getting his 2 cents worth and trying to be like the boss and being all in camera and stuff. We love the fact that he would just, hey, you just let those guys do their jobs and you just kind of lay back, which is what she's doing.
Well, I would say Paul Allen was beloved because he's from here and he was clearly a fan, right?
He was a sports guy. Right.
Sports guy, music guy, like you, Norb, so I think that, we kind of had more of a connection. I don't think Jody Allen's done any kind of press conferences, so she's a real big mystery. I don't blame her. She inherited the team, but it's hard to say what she's going to do.
I think what is tough though, that at a certain point, the owner does have to step up and take action when the ship starts to sink or starts to get off course. So obviously, when things are great, you're just like, hey, we're winning Super Bowls and winning playoffs. Owner, you just stay in your little box and just leave us alone. But when things are going bad, all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's a tension within the team, and it doesn't seem like we're on the same page, and we're losing and finger pointing and all that. Then there's going to eventually come a time where the owner would get involved in really more, I think, down the line though, because again. Is it safe to say, and I think that I'm directing this more towards Steezy, just because, again, Pete Carroll, even though as much as it feels and bad from last year and how it ended, again, coming off a 12-4 season, division winners, we're only halfway through the season. Is it after 10 years, almost 11 years of the what he's brought to this point, is half a season enough to basically say it's warranting being fired? I mean, Bill Belichick last year after Tom Brady left, I mean, the Patriots were not good, right? Were they below 500? I can't remember what their record was last year, but they were definitely not the same. What was it? 7-9. They're below 500, right? Were people calling for Belichick's head? Had he earned enough to be? Well, clearly we know who's the better guy in this tandem. So Bill, you got to go. But he got another year, and now what is he doing? They made changes and and now they're kind of back into it. So is it possible that, you get the blip in the road like the Patriots did? Could they be better next year if we kept the team together, with more time for things to gel?
Can't get worse.
Can't get worse. But I throw that out there because it's so, like I said, so easy to want to fix things right now. I mean, people would fire Pete. If most people had their way, they'd fire Pete Carroll right now, before the season's even over, before we're even technically out of the playoff hunt. I know it feels like we're out of the playoff hunt, but
people
technically
have never run a business before.
But it's just that short.
So, Norb, when I said earlier that I'm on board with the fire Pete thing, I never said you're not implying this, but just to kind of clarify my comments, I've never subscribed to the mindset of fire Pete Carroll midseason. He's definitely earned that. He's earned the right to not be fired in the middle of the season. Because to be fired in the middle of the season, that just means that your season has been a complete disaster. I mean, this season hasn't been a complete disaster. I know we've had a lot of meltdowns, especially last time, Norb, we hopped on the roundtable. I was talking about how in the second half we couldn't play a complete game of football. We were playing one good half of football, and in the second half, when it came time to make adjustments, we couldn't do that. And so we've had, our bright spots. We've had some bright moments this year. It hasn't been a complete disaster. And so he's definitely earned that throughout the course of his career. I've never advocated for him to be fired in the middle of the season. It's never been that bad, but now I'm starting to lean more toward just relinquishing the power. I'm cool with him sticking around as the head coach, but he has to be stripped of some power. There is way too much. Even the best man to do it, the best head coach of all time, and Bill Belichick, had to be stripped of his power for his team to finally start having effective drafts, because that's really what's been hurting us. Everyone wants to keep talking about, when you pay a quarterback this much money, it's hard to win. Well, yeah, but it's also hard to win when you don't draft well. And you're a team that's known to draft well in the later rounds. And so what is going on now? Not only are we unable to find those late round gems, even with our earliest of picks, those second rounders, those late first rounders, teams that are using those picks to draft Lamar Jackson and Nick Chubb. There's so many Pro Bowlers and All Pros that have been selected after round one. And so I'm not holding back. I don't care if we've been drafted in the 30s or if we haven't had first round picks. We've made some terrible decisions with our first round picks, even like we've traded for Max Unger. We traded for Percy Harvin. And so, John Schneider, yes, he deserves some of the blame. Obviously, they talk about, the moves that they make. But like you said, Pete Carroll has veto power. And so, the finger got to be pointed at him. I'm sorry.
Here's another angle on things, because what about the developmental side?
Yeah.
Okay, so we drafted guys.
Yeah.
And then we go, man, this guy didn't amount to so. LJ Collier, he's not even pleased. A healthy scratch every week. What the hell's wrong with this guy? Was it just a bad draft from the get-go? A draft pick from the get-go? Or are we not developing our players?
It's both.
But wouldn't that be on the coaching?
And who's to blame on that? Is it all on Pete Carroll, or do we have issues with our coaching staff? Do we have issues with our scouts? There's not one guy is responsible for everything,
I
right?
got another angle with this, y'all. So, do you guys remember a while back when John Schneider got asked by the Packers to be their GM? Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, what the Seahawks
Yeah. Everyone was like, oh, no, he's going to leave, and then he didn't leave.
That's his dream job, right? John Schneider's dream job, and the Seahawks said, nah, right? And I don't think COVID helped as far as you being able to, go and scout all these players. That season was wonky, right? And the college tapes were all wonky. And I think that, just let's look at the numbers real quick. 2016, we drafted 3 offensive linemen. All in 1 year. We tried to address the problem. You guys remember who we drafted? We got Joey Hunt, short center, didn't work out. Reese Odiombo, guard, doesn't really do anything. Jermaine Ifedi, right, first round draft pick. He at least started for us for several seasons and averaged like a bazillion penalties.
Holding penalties.
Right, so that might be coaching. He
should have been a guard, to be honest. I think if they put him at right guard instead of right tackle, he might have actually had some success. But no one's listening to me.
Every year after 2016, we've drafted 1 offensive lineman every single draft. So just purely volume wise, we're not focusing on the trenches, right? I think they tried with the defensive tackles and defensive ends, but we just haven't had the hits. Malik McDowell would have probably been a really good player had he not gotten injured. Just looking at the tape.
Yeah, and that's just bad luck. That's just bad luck.
That's bad luck.
Nobody could have seen that one coming.
Right. But as far as, focus, I think, unfortunately, I think it starts with that. I think it starts in the draft. I think that's how you win. That's also how you lose. And sometimes the drafting, with development, it takes years and years to find out if someone's bad or good. It just so happens we've now become the Seattle Mariners, and we're now a developmental team for the rest of the league, and nobody wants to come here. Now the Mariners are flipping it around because they've had years and years of being bad, and now they have good draft picks that can now develop. So we're just in that little zone right now where it's like, do we rebuild or do we not? I think Pete Carroll got a little desperate because he, as much as he doesn't want to admit it, he is getting older, right? So they're in win now mode for sure. They're like, we don't care about, having 2 first-round draft picks, a 3rd-round draft pick, and a starting safety for Adams. He didn't care. He's like, we're going to win it all. I thought we were going to win the Super Bowl before the beginning of the year. I thought we had the squad to do it. And I think the team did too. So I think internally they're not ready to give up because they look around, they see great players. They see Tyler, they see DK, they see Russell, they see no offensive lineman. Oh wait, we got Dwayne Brown. They see Jamal, they see Bobby, right? They see these players and then they can't figure out why it doesn't work.
Here's a take. I don't think we're that far off. I think we do have the players that can make it work. I do think we have enough on the offensive line. It's not a great line. Dwayne Brown's not having a great season. He's had some pretty bad plays. We still have great receivers. We still have great tight ends. Gerald Everett does great things when he gets the ball to him, And yeah, it sucks that Chris Carson is out. But I think Alex Collins is enough to get it done. I think DJ Dallas shows he can do some things.
Super Bowl, Norb?
But no, I'm not talking about Super Bowl. I'm not even talking about playoffs here. Playoffs. I just want to see a win where we're actually competitive from a 3rd down, time of possession, and yardage standpoint. And I think, like I said, I told you the reason why, schematically, why it's not working on offense. And they just got to take what the defense is giving them. I feel like we have the players to make that happen. They're just not implementing a scheme to do it. I think it's more that, and that is a coaching thing. It's a coaching thing. And again, I don't know if it's more Pete, if it's Waldron, it's Russell, but that 3-headed monster's got to figure it out. But I don't think it's because of a lack of talent. I think they have enough talent to do it. It's making the use of that talent in ways where they can actually just little things.
NorbCam wants Pete Carroll fired. That's the headline on Washington Post.
That's totally not what I'm saying. That's the opposite of what I'm saying. I'm saying we have what is there, but they've got to pull their heads out of their you-know-whats to do it.
I got to call you out, brother. I heard you cuss for the first time watching your live stream at the game last. That's how you know it's bad, y'all.
When Norb
is cussing live at the game.
It wasn't the first time. Wouldn't be the first time this year, but yeah, no, I couldn't help myself. I try not to because I know the kids are watching, but man, sometimes you just can't help yourself. I want to go to the lines. Yeah, I know it is.
Sorry, guys. I got to run, but love you guys. Thank you very much. And shout out again, Chris, Rachel, and Bruce. Steezy, good to talk with you. Norb, thank you very much.
Likewise.
Daniel, all right. Thanks for joining, man. Appreciate you making the time.
Take care, Daniel. Nice to meet you.
Peace.
All right. Okay. I think I figured we'd wrap up by about 7 o'clock. We got 10 more minutes or so. But I'm going to take a couple more calls out here. Kim Landick's been waiting for a while. Kim.
Hey, Norb. How's it going?
Kim, it's good to hear from you. How you doing?
Can you
Yep.
hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We're good. What you got?
Okay, good. Go Hawks, for one. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Happy
Thanksgiving.
You and I are Seahawkers together, so I just have a couple things to say. I don't want to get into a big, long discussion, but I just want to say that we need to keep people longer than 4 years. I think Pete has got that college mentality. When somebody gets hurt, he trades them or he takes them to free agency. Justin Britt, Bruce Irvin, Michael Bennett. We need to keep those guys to train the new guys how to play the game. He's trying to get these new kids in here to play like we did in 2013, and it's not going to work.
It's an interesting take. I know some of the challenges. I'm sure in a different world where we didn't have salary caps, they would keep a lot more of these guys around longer, and a lot of these things are forced because of salary cap issues. But like who am I thinking of? Who's the offense? Who was our defensive pass rusher who went to Kansas City, had a great year, and then he went off and made the money? Frank Clark. Frank Clark was great. I mean, I would have loved to have kept Frank Clark here, but we couldn't afford him. And
really?
again,
Frank Clark, Bruce Irvin, I mean, all of those guys, we should have kept them. I mean, Bruce Irvin just went to the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and believe me, there's that part of me that loves to hang on to every guy who's been here during those great times. And the hard part is, and here's the real, again, that financial side, which again, why people argue we should trade Russ, is because Russ obviously takes a big chunk of that salary cap that he didn't take before, where we could afford all these guys. And now when Russ has taken this big piece of the pie, there's only so much more pie to go around, which again goes back to that point of why can't we get more talent? If you don't have so much money tied up in certain places, you can go and pay other people who are going to be like rock solid linemen who will stick around for several years that you don't necessarily get in the draft. Well, you can go buy some, but you can't do it if your salary's all tied up. And that's the hard part. And I'm not a cap expert, so I don't know how it all works with all that. But I think a lot of it has to do with that, is that you can't keep everybody, because if you do, and you're then the money runs out.
And I
and you
totally
can't.
agree with that. But then I look at, Jamal Adams. We could have not taken him and kept some of our own people.
I agree. The Jamal Adams thing is a big side of controversy. Will it over time? Will it prove to be worth what we gave up? Right now, it's certainly not looking like it. But again, we're only
over time. I mean, how much time are you going to give him?
Well, we have to give him. We've invested so much. You can't let him go now. I don't think we're going to get anything back for what we gave up at this point. We kind of have to make it work, at least to, right, Steez? I mean, you can't bail on the investment now.
I totally get that part of it, but it's like we invested a lot of money in him when we could have had 2 people for his salary.
No, I agree, but I still
what?
contend though that they're not using him in the most effective way. I think they're getting it a little bit better, but they're not using him definitely in the beginning of the year. They weren't using him to his strengths. They're kind of exploiting his weaknesses, and I think that's to me the biggest issue is the Seahawks aren't using the talent they have to the best of their ability. And we're not talking about trying to make a guy do something 100%. That he doesn't do, but put him in better positions to be more successful. And that's what I think is the biggest issue.
Agreed, 100%.
So there you go. So Kim, thank you. I appreciate the call.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was that again, Kim? Kim? Hello? I think I lost Kim. Steve, you were going to say something?
Yeah. Oh, she's still there.
Oh, yeah. Kim, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I think I cut you off. What were you going to say?
I said Norbert and I had a conversation about Justin Britt.
I like Justin Britt. It was a shame that we couldn't keep him.
I wanted him bad. I wanted to keep him bad, but that's kind of Pete's philosophy, is when somebody gets hurt, he releases them.
Yeah, I know. Point taken. Really, it was bad timing. It was kind of like the Richard Sherman thing. Like, it was the end of the contract, it was renewal time, and then they get hurt. Like, hurt at the worst possible time, and it sucks because I think he would have been perfect to keep going. He was one of our better centers, as it turns out. And,
so then you put Posick in, and then you have 2 rookies.
Yeah. I know it's tough.
Right,
I know.
Norb,
I would not. Yeah, thanks, Kim.
You and I have had many conversations
have a great Thanksgiving.
I love you, Brenton Seahawkers. Go Hawks!
All right, thank you for calling in. Appreciate it. Have a great Thanksgiving, Kim. Man, it's so easy for us to be here in our little cozy offices and go, man, you know what they need to do is this, and they need to do that, and I would not want to be in the hot seat trying to figure these things out, because I know there's no easy answers to all this stuff. So
put me in the hot seat.
I would not want to be in the hot seat. What's that?
I said put me in the hot seat. I want to be in it.
Okay. All right. You want the hot seat. Take it, man. You want the fire. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Steezy's not afraid. He wants it.
But no, I was just going to say, though, I feel like with because you were talking about the salary and whatnot, right? And how because we're paying Russ so much, we can't pay other guys. And I understand Russ isn't helping, the cause because he hasn't restructured the contract. But Seattle, besides or before this year, Seattle was never really known to restructure contracts. They just don't do that because when you restructure a contract, you move the money into the back end, and
down the
latter
line.
half of the years. Yeah, down the line. And so
Right.
Seattle, seeing as how, they're kind of a frugal franchise because, Seattle never really signs, guys in free agency. And so for them to restructure contracts, that's just not a part of their MO. That's not a part of what they do. And so a lot of people will attack Russ and say, oh, yeah, we can't get talent, because Russ is unwilling to restructure contracts. But what if it's just Seattle? What if it's the front office and the coaching staff refusing to restructure his contract? And maybe it doesn't even go out to just Russ. What if they've had opportunities to restructure Bobby's contract? They could have restructured, other contracts along that time period. They didn't get to do that, honestly.
And I don't think they have to get permission. I don't think they have to get permission from the player to do it. They can actually restructure Russ's contract without having to get some approval from him. So you're right. You're right in that.
Player. But yeah, overall point is still, it's still valid. And so when you look at, other teams are constantly restructuring contracts. Patrick Mahomes, yes, he restructured his contract with the Chiefs, but he wasn't the only one. I think Tyrann Mathieu did. I think Travis Kelce did. I think Tyreek Hill did. And that's because the team and the owners are okay with doing that. And so we haven't seen that in Seattle, but maybe it's because the owners and the coaching staff don't want to restructure contracts. And so that's another way to look at it. And that's another reason why I'm so hard on Pete Carroll. It's because I think he's at fault for this and for that and for this and for that and for this and for that. And just generally speaking, like when you're the head guy, it doesn't matter if other parties deserve blame. If you're the head guy, ultimately, most of the blame is going to fall on your shoulders anyway, even if it's your team, that has failed you. But everything is on fire right now, or it seems like it's been like that for the last year and a half. And Pete really hasn't done anything to extinguish that fire. It's not only continuing to linger, but it seems like as the season progresses, it's only getting worse.
I can't argue with you there, man. It is not getting better. It is definitely getting worse after that last performance. Let's go to Tina Workman on the phone line.
Every
Tina,
game and all that, but only home games.
Tina, are you there? Tina, you're on the air. Tina, hello. Hello, Tina.
Yeah.
I don't think she knows she's on the line. She waited on hold so long she forgot to keep her ear on the phone. Let's go to Auburn. A call from Auburn, Washington. Who's this?
Yes, sir.
Hey, is this Devin?
Yes, sir.
Devin, what's up, man?
Yo.
What's going on? What's going on, Stevie? What's going on, Norb?
What's good, Devin?
Whew.
Hey, not much, man. We're pretending like we know everything there is to know about running the Seahawks. What do you think? What are you going to do, man? Someone gave you the magic wand and said, ding, you are now the owner of the Seahawks. What do you do?
You know what I do? Okay, here we go. I've been thinking about this too, because the chat gave me some ideas. So I've been saying this for a while, but Pete is a defensive-oriented coach, and so what I think we need, right? Because look at our rivals, the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan, the man's their offensive coordinator. He's an offensive genius, but yet can put together a good defense, right? We need a coach that can run the offense, right? Instead of just hiring an offense coordinator, we need a coach that can run the offense. And I think if we do that, and here's another thing. They keep talking about, Russ is this, Russ is that, get rid of him. If it wasn't for Russ, even Pete Carroll said himself, Pete Carroll wouldn't have a job. Russ deserves better than what's going on right now. If you put Russ on the Saints right now, they'd probably go to the Super Bowl. They're a quarterback away from being really solid and going to the Super Bowl. So it's like,
are you suggesting a trade? Are you suggesting a Russ trade?
I'm a Russ fan. I think he deserves so much more. It's like he's carried this franchise for a good amount of time now, ever since the LOB and Marsh on, and it's like people are like, oh, he doesn't succeed because this and that, but it's just hard because I like Russ, and I think Russ deserves a lot. He deserves the money. It's not like he doesn't deserve the money,
And even though he doesn't restructure, like, it's just hard. But I saw in the comments, someone brought up the Eagles, and if I were the GM, I was the owner, I would consider a trade to the Eagles because they have 2 top 10 picks along with one, like, I think number 11 just outside that's Indiana's pick. That's just outside the top 10. And they have Jalen Hurts. So what I'm thinking, we get 2 first-round picks, one in the top 10, and it can be that outside pick, and Jalen Hurts, maybe 3 first-round picks, for Russell Wilson. And considering that, Jalen Hurts is young, he's really good. But the Eagles, if they had a chance to get Russell Wilson, I think they would bite on that, right? So trading, we get
you're getting like way steps down the line. You're already talking trade, which team it's going to be for. Yep. I mean, obviously whatever it's going to be, we're going to get a nice little ransom there. I mean, the positive side is if it does feel like the end of the Russell Wilson era, and really it may not be even about the Seahawks trading Russell Wilson. If Russell Wilson decides I'm just done in Seattle, well then he's done. I mean, he's going to make that point very clear next year, and he'll basically in effect force the trade, and he'll have the ability to choose where he goes because he's got no trade clause, right? So he kind of gets to approve where he's going to go if and when a trade is going to be made. But that's going to come down to it. Is it really a feud between Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll? And is it one of those things where if you're to gun to head on Russell Wilson, is the reason why you would stay or leave the presence of Pete Carroll here? Well, then that would come down to the owner having to make a decision. Would I rather keep Russell, who would be willing to stay in Seattle if Pete Carroll leaves? Or do you go with Pete Carroll and say, sorry, Russ, I'm sticking with him. We've got a deal in place, and he's gotten us this many years. I mean, that's kind of what it ultimately may come down to. But,
Yeah, and here's another thing. The only draft pick that I had a problem with, right, was I like Jordan Brooks and all, right? But when you have a running back that struggles to stay healthy, and you have a guy like Jonathan Taylor that wants to become a Hawk,
that's
and
looking
he
like
ran
a really
for
bad miss right now, doesn't it?
Consecutive yards, and he every question he's asked, he's like, "Oh, Seattle, Seattle, Seattle." If we just made that happen, Russ would be so happy. Because that guy right now is the rushing leader right now, even though, granted, Derrick Henry's hurt. He's the rushing leader right now. The man had a 5-touchdown game. Oh, gosh. That's the only draft that I've had a problem with.
We've had bad luck with our running backs. I mean, bad drafts. Rashad Penny was a bad pick. I remember at the time, like, the Seahawks select Rashad Penny. We're like,
who?
What? Why? We could have had him 2 rounds later. Why did they reach for him? I feel like Seattle's reached for players who turned out to not even be worth reaching for. That's probably really doomed them in terms of why we don't have better players in those spots. Because it's, you said, Steezy, it's not only that, we just because we've been winning, we can't draft good players. We've passed on good players that we all were screaming, go get this guy, get this guy. No. What did you pick him for? So even us as just average Joes watching the draft already had bad feelings. And unfortunately, it's more often than not recently where it's been why the hell we draft that guy? And it turns out, why the hell we draft him? It turned out to be a wasted pick. You have to go way back to where you go the opposite, where they go, wow, he drafted him. I didn't want him, but wow, he turned out to be good. When's the last time that happened? Steezy?
And Norb, so on that point, Devin was talking about a recent example of a draft that he didn't like. Well, we can even point back to this past year's draft. And I'm not saying I don't like Dwayne Eskridge. I love him as a prospect, but I think a lot of people said that he was a reach. And even though we like him, he was probably a reach. And you know who we picked him over? We actually picked him over one of the best centers in football right now, who actually is a rookie. He plays for the Kansas City Chiefs, and his name is Creed Humphrey, I think from the Ohio State. And yes, he had a torn ACL, and so he was a little lower down people's draft boards. But I'm not trying to downplay the significance of a torn ACL. But in today's day and age, sports medicine and technology around sports and recovering and whatnot, it's gone dramatically up. And so Creed Humphrey, we could have taken him. But instead, we took a wide receiver who hasn't been healthy, and even in the games that he's been healthy, we haven't even been using him. And so if we had selected a Creed Humphrey, we'd have one of the best centers in football right now. And that's what the Chiefs are able to enjoy while we're over here just still looking back on what could have been.
So no doubt the drafting has been crap more often than not the last few years. And it's hard to not look any further than the head coach and the GM as to ultimately they're the ones who pull the trigger on those. So yeah, the drafting definitely falls on their hands. But as I said earlier, I don't believe that Seattle is in a situation where they can't improve what they're doing because they don't have the talent. You know, I still don't think it's a lack of talent. It could be better, but I think they have enough weapons and Russell Wilson and tight ends. I feel you put those guys on. And by saying this, I'm almost creating an argument of fire Pete Carroll or whatever. But you take that same group of guys and put them on another team with a different coach, a different philosophy and approach, that they would do better. They would be fine. But I defend that by saying it's within the realm of understanding. And I like to think that between Coach Carroll, Waldron, and Russell, that they could look at it and with all this film study they look at, they'd be able to go, look, Russ, if you just hit Alex Collins at the 5-yard line, we score a touchdown here, we whittle a bunch of clock, and we would have, this totally would have been a different situation. You got to make those plays. We've got to make that play happen there and not throw the ball away and waste the opportunity. I mean, those little things, I think it's that. I think we can overcome that. So anyway, well, we're getting down to time. I'm going to try one more time to see if Tina is available. Tina, are you there on the phone? Tina? No?
Hello?
Oh, hello?
Hello?
Yes. Well, this doesn't sound like Tina. But the name says Tina.
Oh, no.
Who's this?
This is Blake.
Blake. Okay, you must be using a different number. Anyway, Blake, who I called Tina. Blake, where are you calling from?
Ohio.
Ohio. Okay. Seahawks fan?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, you're the last caller here, so go ahead and weigh in on what's your thought. You have a question? You had a comment? What you got?
Question for you.
All right. Shoot.
All right. Would you rather fix the defense or would you fix the O-line?
Would I rather fix the? Are you asking? Would we rather fix the defensive line or fix the offensive line? Is that what you're asking?
Or the defense in general. My bad.
Oh, defense in general. So fix the defense or fix the offensive line. And I guess you're asking from a sense of if you had to address needs via draft or priority in terms of trades or free agency, would you focus on fixing the D or fixing the offensive line? Steezy, I'm going to go to you with that first. How would you take that one? And that's a good question because if you're the GM and you're the coach, you come up with a strategy, right? You got to decide on your draft board. Okay, here's the plan, guys. We got to fix our O line. We're gonna pick early. We're gonna go free agents on the O line, or do you go our defense needs work? Let's put it there. What would you do?
That's tough because I think we definitely need help.
Defense to win.
Go ahead.
True.
Go ahead, Steve. Continue. Oh, sorry.
So
go ahead.
We definitely need help on both lines. I think just because there's so much talent on offense, there's such talent on defense, I'd actually start with the offensive line. I mean, that's been an issue for years now. And I know I've been on record saying that, Russ kind of makes their job a little harder just because he's so, he's such a magician back there. He's constantly moving. Sometimes they're not anticipating this. He's unpredictable. And yes, he does make magic when it comes to unscripted stuff like that. But at the same time, sometimes it makes their job a lot harder. I think if you were to bring in just more competent offensive line, guys that are really elite at their positions, maybe you don't run into that problem. I know Dwayne Brown has been a rock, but this year he's having his worst year yet, I feel like, in the Seahawks uniform. So we haven't really had an elite member this year. I mean, Damian Lewis, he's kind of taken a step back. Maybe we shouldn't have moved him from right guard to left guard because I don't think his play has improved. And then our center play has just been Kyle Fuller. I mean, his start to the season was, I'm sorry, but relative to his peers, I mean, it was awful. And then Ethan Postic has recently come on, but he hasn't been much better. Gabe Jackson has been consistent. He gave up his first sack against the Cardinals. And on the right tackle side, Brandon Shell, he's missed a couple of games, still struggling to stay consistent.
He's missed a few blocks.
and missed a few
Yeah.
blocks. We have simply way too much talent on offense. And so if we want to protect and make these guys play, you know, to the level that we're accustomed to seeing, I feel like having an offensive line, you know, will do us a little bit more justice than, you know, by focusing on the D-line.
I'm with you there. I'm with you there because I think Russ wants to be able to have time to throw. I mean, you know, he wants to cook, and you can't cook if your line is letting guys in there like a traffic cone. So it would help the pressure because there are times when Russell holds the ball too long, but there are definitely times when there are just guys running right through and not being picked up. So offensive line, I agree. I mean, it would help all phases. Obviously, it'd be great to get better pass protection, but also running game. I mean, no one's ever going to complain about having a great offensive line, right? Most teams that have a great offensive line usually have pretty good success on the offensive side of the ball, which is the thing that we are sucking at right now. All right, A1 Gamer Trey, I'm going to leave you one more comment here before we wrap this up. A1 Gamer Trey. And Blake, thanks for your call, man. Appreciate it. A1 Gamer Trey, last word for the Discord. What you got?
Oh, I got a question. It's just for Steezy. I got a question. What you said that Pete is almost done. So say that we win the rest of our games, and what would you decide to do with Pete if he won the rest of our games and potentially make it to the playoffs or win a few games in the playoffs?
So I'll definitely approach him after the season, and I'll be like, "Yo, you know, we'll keep you on as a head coach, but we're gonna have to take some of that GM power away from you, big fella. You haven't been doing nothing with it in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and so, or at least you made more bad decisions than good. And you know, we look at your playoff record, we're gonna overlook that, but because you know you were able to kind of help us to jumpstart a little run to kind of end the season a little better than the way it started, then I'd go to him and say, look, you know, you could remain the head coach, but something got to give. And I think what got to give is his power as a GM.
A1 Gamer Trey, thanks for the call. So I probably already asked you this in so many ways, but if it came down to it, and Pete and Russ were both in the room standing in front of you, and Pete and Russ says, I will stay in Seattle only if Pete Carroll is gone after this season, would you be like, okay, done, he's out of here?
I hate answering that question, but you know, it has to be Russ. And it's not just going to be completely because of Pete's age. You know, we all know he's the oldest coach in football. We all know that if we were to look at who has more time in the NFL, it'd be Russ. But I just feel like Pete is just not going to want to go through a rebuild. I mean, it's one or the other, right? Like, only one guy could drive the boat. They're not going to continue to jockey for power or jockey for offensive philosophy, you know, over and over and over and over again, when it's the same result over and over and over again. And so I just think with Russ, I mean, we always say this, quarterbacks don't grow on trees, especially franchise quarterbacks. And I just feel like we've been running Pete's way this entire time. We've never really turned to Russ. We did for 5 games, but 5 games in 10 years, I think we just give him a shot. You know, if all else fails with Russ calling the shots or at least being in charge, then so be it. I mean, I just feel like Pete has already run his course. And so let's let Russ run his. You know, and maybe he's not playing like a top 5 quarterback this year, but he's still widely regarded as a top 5 quarterback. That means he's an elite quarterback, and not many teams have an elite quarterback. And you know how hard it is to get an elite quarterback? A lot of people are, we could trade for all the Eagles' first-round picks, but none of the upcoming quarterbacks in this upcoming draft is worth even taken in the top 10. And so what if we have 3 first-round picks, 2 of them in the top 10? There's no quarterbacks worthy of being taken in the top 10. So what are we going to do with those picks? Take other positions? That's fine. And then we could wait to grab a quarterback later on. But how long is that going to take? Some teams have never had a franchise quarterback. Looking at the Chicago Bears, and they've been in existence for how many years? I don't want to be in that same boat.
So the Jets had they're so terrible. Still struggling to find, you know, their perfect quarterback answer, you know? So,
exactly.
They don't grow on
number
trees.
2, number 3,
they
number
don't
4,
grow on
number
trees.
5 overall picks each and every single year, and
So
they
many
still don't know
years.
what to do with it.
Yeah. And let's be real. When we say it's a rebuild, what defines the Seahawks are officially going through a rebuild is if Russell's not here anymore. Because if Russell's here, I don't think we're in a rebuild. I think we're still moving pieces around. But if he leaves, it is officially a rebuild. I think you could even lose Pete Carroll, keep Russ, and I don't even know if I'd call that a rebuild. Would you call it a rebuild if Russ stayed here and Pete Carroll was gone?
It'd be
I
a
wouldn't call it
revamping of the
that.
team. It'd be a changing of the guard.
So it really comes down to Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is the player that defines whether it's this era or moving on to the next one. Agreed?
I think so. As unfair
Right.
as it might sound, I think so.
All right. Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap things up here. So I certainly would be remiss if I didn't give you, Steezy, a chance to talk about your channel, because you've been doing a lot of great things. Even though we haven't communicated as much because we haven't done enough of these doggone roundtables. I hope we can do more before the season's up. But tell everybody about your channel, because some of them may not know you, and let them know what you've been up to.
Well, as always, Norb, I got to thank you for having me on. I mean, it's sad and it's unfortunate that Squabbo couldn't be on, that Coach Marsh, Seahawks Martin couldn't stay on longer. I think Brian overslept. And shout out to Daniel as well. Great guy. I always appreciate being on. I'm always honored. It's always a pleasure. And so thank you so much for that. To everybody that's tuning in, to everybody that did tune in, to everybody that will tune in, thank you so much. We appreciate all the great support. I hate to sound selfish here, but, kind of plug myself a little bit. But I'm actually about 100 away from reaching 3K in subscribers, and we made it a goal to hit 3K by the end of this year. We have about a month to do so. And so I selfishly asked, and I apologize in advance if you guys aren't already, or for new viewers out there, if you guys could please hit that sub, help me get to 3K, help Squab get to 1K, help Norb get to 50K. We greatly appreciate it. And one more selfish plug, but I did just drop a video not too long ago. It's titled "End of an Era in Seattle." And so after the roundtable, if you guys have a second, go ahead and check that out for me. Show some love. And as always, hit that like button, drop a comment, and a lot of love for y'all. Love you guys. Go Hawks.
All right, so you can find all the guys' channels in the description. So definitely get Steezy to 3K. It's only 100. Doggone it, that shouldn't take long at all. So, hit all these guys up: Squabo and Coach Marsh and Steezy, and Seahawks Martin's not doing it anymore, but that's okay. So give him some love, and I just want to say, it's been great, Steezy. I missed these banters. That we had done, you've been doing every week, but I feel like I'm going to have a little more time to do this. So hopefully this won't be the last one, and we can get more of the gang back together. It's a little bit hard. It's been tough this year. Schedules are not like they were last year, where everybody was just, I think, more, we were kind of all more available, but we'll make it work best we can. But this was good. I loved hearing the different takes. Daniel had some interesting takes. The viewers had some good takes. Steve's, yours as well. And I don't agree with everything that everybody says here, but that's the fun part about it, is that we get to just sort of speculate while the real world turns, and we'll see what the real Seahawks do. And we got the game against the Washington football team. We didn't even talk about that, but I don't think we really need to, because I think the only reason Seattle doesn't win against the Washington football team is if they beat themselves. Because they've been beating themselves badly all year and not being the team that they have the potential to be. So if they can get right and see what they can do with the team and the players that they have, I think they can get this thing cleaned up. And who knows? Wouldn't that be awesome if they had some miracle stretch when nobody saw it coming, and this team was 3-7. All of a sudden they finished with a 10-7 record, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, whoever saw this coming? What a comeback!"
I mean, Norb, here's a little nugget for you. Mathematically, we're not eliminated. According to Football Outsiders, we have a 4% chance, a whopping 4% chance to still make the playoffs. And so, we still in it to win, baby.
Oh, yeah. Well, until they say you're out, you're still in. So, I mean, we got a lot of games to go. But I'm not even concerned. Yeah. But I'm not concerned about that. I'm just concerned about where we're trending in the way our team is playing. That's all I'm really wanting to see. I want to see us, get that time of possession up, that number of yards more even, third down completions, getting something closer to 40, 50%. Imagine if we had that, man. We would be going nuts. We'd be like going, "Oh my God, who is this team?" Because it's been so bad, right? You get third down and 4. I don't know about you, but I feel like, I don't think we're getting this, man. Third and four, it might as well be 3rd and 15. It's so hard for this team. 3rd and 1, I'm holding my breath, man. It's like, some teams is like, oh, 3rd and 1, they got this. Arizona last week, I felt like they could get 3rd and 20. And, they looked like they could get it. They got some 3rd and 15s and 3rd and 18s. Well, we can't get 3rd and 3. Anyway, so clean a few things up. I think this team still got some some hope left. We'll leave
And
it
look,
at that.
one more point, Norb. I feel like if we are to fight strong, if we're to show resiliency, if we're to finish the year strong and go on some sort of winning streak, maybe that entices Russ even more to want to, give Seattle one more shot. Because then he could look at Seattle and say, yo, we still have some fight in us. We still got that dog in us, and we rallied to end the season. And so maybe he thinks about that heading into the offseason. He's like, you know what? I got to give these guys one more shot. They're fighters.
Yeah, completely. And I don't know. I can't remember which viewer asked the question, but he said, "Hey, so if we did win out the rest of the season, would would that change your feeling about about whether Pete Carroll should go or not, based on if we went on a run like that?" Yeah, it's like you said, in Russ's mind, only.
Sorry, but it's iffy because I feel like these problems have been happening for years now. I'm not just looking at this year and saying, oh, yeah, we got to fire Pete because of this year. It's not that. It's the last 4 years, the last 5 years.
Right. And the lack of success in the playoffs.
And the draft.
And the drafting and all that.
And being too conservative and having way too much power. It's all those things.
Yeah. I'd like to see him. Would you like to see him go for it on fourth down every once in a while? I think they got to take some chances. Right? Because, when you're desperate, right? You can't play not to lose anymore because it's kind of like on defense, right? I think we all know that if Seattle just plays just don't get beat deep, what's going to happen is going to be this. And they're just going to march down the field, wear the defense out, and then they're eventually going to score anyway. So why not take a few risks, blitz a few more things, just, go after it, get after them a little bit. And yeah, if you get beat deep, well, crap, we got beat deep. But at least you're not getting that whole nickel and dime formula, which has not worked for us. So, anyway. So I just hope the movie looks a little bit different next week. So Monday Night Football, let's not embarrass ourselves in front of the nation, all right?
Yeah, we already got flexed out of that matchup against the Niners. So
I know. They're already like, sorry, Seattle, we don't need to see the toilet bowl between the 49ers and the Seahawks. Nobody wants to see that.
Let's not give them more reason.
I know. It sucks, man. It sucks that we got flexed out. It's like, man, remember there's a time when Seattle was like primetime gold? It's like you couldn't get enough Seattle in primetime. And now
they always wanted to flex us in.
Flex us in. Yeah. There was a time I remember where it was almost the opposite. It was like when we were really dominating that, like that 2013-ish, 14-ish time. There was a time when it was almost where on prime time we were so good that it was almost too good. It wasn't even a really competitive game to where they're like, oh man, they're too good to put on here because it's not even a close battle. But boy, have times changed.
We're blowing
it's not
teams
too
out
late to
back
change
then.
back.
We never do that anymore.
And that's to bring all these late arguments into it. But one issue I had with Pete Carroll since the beginning, and I've said this many times, is that whole mantra about can you win the game in the first quarter thing. That's a messed up mentality. It's true, but you can win the game in the first quarter if you score 21 points.
To like a 4 or 5 possession lead, yeah, you can.
You give Russell Wilson we blew a 17-point lead against the Titans, which don't know how that happened. But you get a 21-point lead, a 28-point lead. Most of the time, the Titans game was notwithstanding, Russell Wilson's going to win that game for you after that point. It's been proven. So why not score a few points out in the beginning? Let's shake it up. So
come out guns a-blazing.
Yeah. I mean, if we're going to go down, let's go down firing. All right. And Alina with the final chat says, you can sing the chat out to me. And birthday, right? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Alina, the best moderator in YouTube ever. Happy birthday to you. All right. Happy birthday, Alina, and happy Thanksgiving to all of you. And with that, we will sign off and say, as we always do, go Hawks.